Welcome to Fairy Tale Access, where the head fairy's quest is to prove that fairy tales do exist in actual time rather than once upon a time. Together, we will unravel the heroes, young and old, who turn dreams into reality. These are the people who still believe in happily ever after. The discoveries will bend even our most cynical non-believers into believing in fairy tales. Welcome to Fairy Tale Access. Today we're going to meet author Wayne Kramer with the Heroes of Time Legends and Murdoch's Choice. If you love pirates, you're going to really enjoy this series. Thank you for joining us from Indiana by Skype. How are you?
Hi, Denise. I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. All right. How did you come up with this adventure? It's definitely like a high sea adventure, stopping in foreign ports. So there's a lot of world building involved. Do you travel a lot, or have you?
Yeah. So, first and foremost, I am definitely a fantasy genre author. So I have just always enjoyed the fantasy genre and action adventure. So that's what I write. That's what I read, and that's what I enjoy writing. And I have a lot of background practicing on that. With this particular book, this is a debut for this Heroes of Time series, and there's a lot of inspirations really that go into my background that finally went into the Heroes of Time series. But this particular one with the seafaring theme is interesting because personally, I had never really been like a big nautical guy, not a sailor. I actually get a little bit seasick, and I was actually inspired by this because of who inspired the main character. And the person behind the main character was a dear friend of mine named Skip Person. This main character I'm talking about is Captain Zale the Gale Murdoch. And he's based on a friend and colleague and family member who passed away of a bad lung disease a couple of years ago.
Sorry.
But before he passed away, I had already been working on the Heroes of Time series. I'd been forming the world building and outlining the main series. And I had decided that he was such a colorful guy, interesting guy with a larger than life personality. I wanted to base a character on him, which is typically not something I look to do. Like, I don't normally want to base characters on real people. But he was one case that I did. And I started asking him, I'm like, look, if you were a character in my series, what would you want to be? And he had a Navy background, and what he came up with was, I'd like to be a sea captain. And so that really formed the whole thing. That formed the whole basis for the story and set that seafaring theme to it.
So you must have done a lot of research, because there are a lot of nautical specifics, like the Casper system.
Right.
The mariner's compass. It was really good.
Yes. I did. Yeah. Whenever I write something, I do try to make it feel authentic. It's obviously a fantasy environment, but I want it to feel authentic, at least within the world. And, knowing I'm not really a skilled sailor or experienced in that, I did do some research. Some simple things such as just paying a lot of attention to pop culture things like Pirates of the Caribbean, Master and Commander, reading up on various articles and things that were applicable to what I was doing in the story. So yeah, there was definitely some research that went into that.
Yeah, a little bit of Tomb Raiders too.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was great the way that they were going after something in particular without giving it away. And I like the whole the dynamics between Jensen and Starlina.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, like that slow burn love story. Well, maybe, yeah, but just like coming to terms. So that whole coming of age and young love was really well played out.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. Those were two characters I felt like, needed to be in there. It was maybe a little too, maybe it wasn't speaking to the right audience if I had just the, salty old sea captain.
No, I think that it was a good mix. It really gave you that whole pirate feel because you have that strong sea captain type of character, with a salty personality, really kind of gruff in some places. But then he can turn around and, be really kind. So it was just great the way that you played out all those dynamics. It was really well done. And it kept you tuned in. So you kept turning the page like, I got to finish. I have to. And that whole, the good versus evil played out well without being, it was great the way that you just kind of slid it in there.
Sure. Yeah. And a lot of that speaks to the world building that I'd done prior to writing Murdoch's Choice. And Murdoch's Choice, the book itself, this first debut book, took me about 3.5 months to write, which for me is pretty fast. About 3.5 years before that, I had started on the world building and on the first novel of what I call the main series, which is another novel that'll come out later called The First Ethereal. This one is actually kind of a tie-in. The Murdoch series is almost going to be a tie-in series to the main series. And so I had done a lot of background and already written a much larger book leading into this. And I think, what a lot of people see in Murdoch's Choice is that it's leading into something bigger. It's leading into a bigger world. The book in and of itself, it's a fun, fast-paced seafaring adventure, but there is a lot more that's going to happen and a lot more behind it. It's not just, the simple little treasure hunt. There's a lot going on in this world, and there's a lot left yet to be discovered. So I appreciate you noticing that.
Yeah, I think you can, I don't know, the way you did it, Wayne, you really tied us into liking a lot of these characters. So we definitely want to see the next part of the series because we want to see what you do to them. And if you're going to kill any of our favorite people.
You never know.
How many books will be in the series?
Yeah, so I believe we're looking at least a trilogy for the Murdoch portion of the series. And then the second one I expect will be ready here and maybe I think we'll probably have editing and such done in the April-May timeframe, and then it'll be published shortly after that. So a trilogy for the Murdoch series, and then the main series I mentioned, which is kind of the main epic fantasy Heroes of Time series. I have that mapped out very loosely as a potential of 6 books, but it's so early in, you never know. That could certainly change. I think even Robert Jordan once said that he was going to do a trilogy, and look what happened to him. It became 12 books or 14 books. So that was, you never know where it might lead.
That's great, though. All right, and what about this quest for the Grimmstone? I mean, because seekers really need to beware.
The quest for the Grimmstone. I mean, yeah, that really shapes everything that Murdoch does from the point that they set sail. He's not looking for something like that. To go into the background a little bit, Murdoch he's coming on in age a bit. He's older. He's experienced, and he's far in his career, and he's at this. He's looking to achieve this, what they call a mastery bar that has never been achieved before. That hasn't been achieved for generations in their seafaring mercantile guild, and he and his rival, Captain Sea Dread Rummy, are vying for this. Once they reach this mastery bar, they get all kinds of great perks within their guild, and it's almost like a nice retirement plan. He can kind of do what he wants for once, and which is a big deal because labor in this kingdom, in this civilization, it all goes into feeding the system, and it's really hard for people to break out of that. And the mastery bar is a way that he can do that and finally kind of relax in life. So he's trying to reach that bar, and they're just looking for 1 or 2 really good runs. It could be simple, quick, fast, but this Grimmstone job comes up and eats at him internally, because he starts to find that he has familial connections to it. He starts to find that he has ancestry that's connected to it, and that he might even be the only one who can actually retrieve it. But it becomes more than that, because it's not just him, it's the ancestor, it's anybody that's in his ancestry. So they start to realize that if he doesn't get it, that these people who really want it will start to look to his family, will start to look to Starlina, his daughter, and anybody down his family line. So his family is in danger, he feels like, if he doesn't go and get this. And so he risks a lot going off the course of their easier charges to go and find this Grimmstone, which most people don't even think exists, and then bring it back. And he kind of brings the crew on board to say, look, if we get this, this will be the biggest thing we've ever done, and we're in, and we'll beat Sea Dread to it. So the Grimmstone changes a lot for Zale in his life.
It changes a lot for a lot of people that were involved.
Yes, it does. Yes,
but it was
pretty much everybody involved.
Yeah, but it was a great adventure that you definitely wanted to be on. Like, even Starlina started to enjoy it along the way, I think.
Yeah, Starlina, the poor girl gets a bad rap in this book. So, I get concerned that she complains too much in this book, but at the same time, I've looked back and I thought, well, I mean, she just goes through such a rough time. It's such a rough transition for her to be thrust into this adventure without wanting to be, without even, she completely rejects the sea and the fact that her father has been a seafaring captain her whole life and absent for a lot of her life. And she finds herself thrust into it. And eventually I think she probably starts to sense a little bit of that adventure in her blood. And by later on, she's warming up a little bit, it seems. But, I don't know. Someone who rejects something that hard for so long is probably going to have a hard time fully accepting it. But I think she comes around a little bit.
Well, I can't wait to see what happens in book 2. But I thought it was clever, and I really thought you had a seafaring background because of the way that you laid out the whole adventure that the crew goes through. And then on the other side of the coin is the families, how they feel about things, what their concerns were. I thought it was really well laid out.
Thank you. Yeah, Zale's personality. I mean, what I wanted to bring out in him was he is this, by day, this really, just really on the top of his game in the Seafaring Guild, and kind of, that scallywag. I won't go so far as to really call him a pirate, but he's just the best at what he does, and he knows that. But on the other side, you have the more kinder, gentler pop to his grandkids, and that really again kind of reflects the real person that he was based on, because you could almost think, as I think back to the real guy, I mean, it was almost like dual personalities. You had the gruff, like relentlessly personal person, and then on the other side you had the fun-loving family guy. And so those are two dynamics I wanted to try to incorporate into this character.
What's your background? Did you go to school for writing or creative writing?
Writing has always been a passion for me, and an interest. It was not specifically something I went to school for. It's just something that I'm very practiced on from many years growing up. My background is in business. I actually own my own business in medical equipment, imaging parts, and that's a business called W7 Global. And that's what I've got that pays the bills. My writing career is very young. I've just that's only started off here in the last 6 months or so, and but that's something I'd love to be doing more and more and focusing more and more. And I do every day make time to focus on writing and developing the series.
Well, you did say you've traveled to nearly 40 countries, but only half of the United States?
Yeah, I haven't been to all the states. I have, and a lot of it through my work. I've had the opportunity to travel to a lot of different countries, and that's something that I enjoy, and it's something that I've missed a lot over the past couple of years because it's not been viable to do it. But I look forward to starting again, and that has shaped, I think, my personality in terms of just my reading people and interacting with people of all different backgrounds and cultures and businesses. That I think helps me with character development, to be quite honest, because it helps me put together more diverse characters and to get into the heads of different characters, because I've interacted with so many different people, and it's really a blessing to have been able to do that.
Well, no, I think that definitely shows up in the books because the characters are well developed. They're very different from each other, even the bad guys.
Thank you.
What about the magic system? How did you develop that? Because it seems to be clear cut throughout.
Yeah, again, that goes into something I was doing over a few years. So, it was a lot of things have come together for me. I'm sure that I've kind of cherry picked, like I've done, okay, here's a piece of this kind of story that I really like, and this kind of story. Here's elements of time travel. Here's elements of different worlds. There's a little bit of an elemental magic system to it. This one it's based on ethereal materials, which are materials that have entered the world through what they call archastrals, which are basically like archangels that have entered the world to save it at different points in history from cataclysmic events that the world simply could not have survived without their intervention. And there's probably some I don't know, maybe some elements of my beliefs in there, some Christianity in there, some elements of other stories that I've written for many, many years. I was working on a novelization of a video game called Chrono Trigger, which I still, if Square Enix is ever out there listening, I'd still love to do that book. And there may be little elemental, magical elements from that. And when I say elemental, I'm talking like, earth, water, fire, wind, sky kind of thing. So yeah, I just think it's a lot of different things weaved together that has put it, that has made it what it is, and piecing it together. And I keep lots of notes files and world building files that help me organize that stuff and try to make sense of it.
What other research did you do for the background on the pirates? Because the whole rivalry between different pirate groups was really well played out. It had a little Celtic kind of flair in between with the adventure quest components of it. So, what do you read? Maybe that's it.
In preparing for this book, I specifically read Master and Commander by Patrick O'Brien, and the first book especially. And when I read it, I didn't just read it like through. I would actually have my phone next to me making notes about, okay, here's something from this seafaring life. And this particularly was kind of more naval, British Navy. But I could still pull out elements of things that were like, okay, sea life, here's just how they live in the ship, how the decks may lay out, how the inner deck tends to be, the berthing deck where the hammocks and stuff are at. I also did a lot of research on different types of vessels. Mm-hmm. And I knew, again, you'd look at a book like Master Commander, and it's a lot of large 2-3 masted sailing ships that may have crews of 200 people. And I didn't really want to get that expansive. I didn't want to keep track of that much. I didn't feel like Murdoch would have or need or want a crew of that size in the kind of specialized mercantile work that he does. I wanted a crew more like, 30 people or so. And so I looked at different examples, and eventually landed on an inspiration from Narnia, the Dawn Treader ship from Narnia. And I looked at that and thought, that's an interesting model. So I kind of compared that to other real life ships, and landed on what is the Queenie, which is Captain Zale the Gale's ship. And there's actually a diagram of it in the front of the book. And that is kind of a merchant cog, and that fed into the research for that. So research of a lot of different areas, a lot of different articles online. Yeah.
The cover came out great. Who did this for you?
Oh yeah, the cover I was super happy with. That is, and this person does all my illustrations, and I have illustrations of all my characters, most of the characters in the book on my website. The cover was done by Steam Power Studios out of Australia. She's does an excellent job, and I'm thrilled to work with her. She does a really great job on that stuff.
I just love the details, the guys hanging off the side, the front of the ship. I love the whole makeup of it. And it really brings you more into the story as you read, because, you know, when you're picking it up after you put it down, you're like, oh yeah, I can imagine. Like, I can imagine being, you know, with fantasy, you want it to be believable, and you do a really good job of sucking us into reading this until we're done.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was up one night really late because I was like, wait, I have to find out what happens.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, you know, you try to weave in those moments where you want to end the chapters at a good point where you want to keep going. So definitely try to do that. So I'm glad that worked out for you.
Yeah, there were some chapters that allowed me to take a break, which was nice. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
sure.
It was one of those books that you thought about afterwards, and then, you know, when you pick it back up to read the color or to read it again, you're like, oh, the cover just draws you into it.
Thank you. Yeah. The cover is based on one of the more exciting scenes of the book. So that was what I looked to do. Was, you know, I thought about what are all the different scenes, particularly action scenes in this book, and what would best reflect the overall adventure theme to it. And that's what we landed on. The ship there with you see the purple flames in the background.
Mm-hmm.
That's called Darkfire, and they are trying to get away from it. And that's what you got there.
That was great. And I like the port showing in the background slightly.
Uh-huh. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, she did a great job. All right. And you've been to the Hobbiton in New Zealand?
Oh, yeah. The Hobbiton movie set. Yes, that is probably the standout favorite trip for me personally. Back in 2016, I had the opportunity. It was actually, and even better is the whole thing was a business write-off. Because I actually went to New Zealand to meet some colleagues out there and in Auckland, and just really a beautiful, picturesque country, the whole place. But then going to Hobbiton as a fantasy fan, obviously, you know, is just the icing on the cake, and it's so amazing how real it is. It really comes to life. And then the anticipation of walking up the path to Bilbo's house. I mean, you're recognizing everything. And to actually, you don't normally get to live some of your favorite movies. But when you go there, if anybody gets the chance to, I would highly, highly recommend it. It really comes to life. You're there. I mean, it is the actual place where they did this. And it feels like a real place. And you don't want to leave.
Oh, that's funny. All right. And what's going on in book 2, or when is it going to be released?
Book 2, I'm hoping will be completed. I go through a process. I do beta readers, I do editing, I do proofreading, all the stuff. So there's some time that goes into it. I'm not just a rapid release guy. So I do go through all of that, and I think that we're shooting for about the May timeframe. I'm hoping. I don't want to be completely held to that, but that's what I'm shooting for as for publishing that. So I think it'll probably go up for pre-order. I'd say sometime maybe around April, and then it will go live for actual print and shipment as soon as we can after that.
That's great, because people are probably really waiting for it to come out.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the biggest comment I get is, "Okay, when's the next one?" And I definitely appreciate that. And so every day I'm working on finishing that up, getting that story written and done, and polished. So yes, I look forward to getting that out there for everybody to see the continuing adventures of Murdoch and Starlina, and see what's in store for all those guys.
Yeah, the ending was, it wasn't too bad of a cliffhanger. It was a nice way to end it, but it still left the reader with like, how long is it going to take to do book 2? Where is it?
Yeah. So when in a first book like this, I subscribed to what I first saw Brandon Sanderson talk about, which is that you should make your first book able to be standalone, a standalone adventure, but with sequel potential. And I definitely went for that here. It's a great adventure in and of itself, but sure, it leaves something more to be desired and more to be explored, and there will be.
Well, I am excited to see where this series goes. Thank you for sharing so much about yourself and how you developed this exceptional story.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
My pleasure. Until next time, keep asking questions. And if you want to get lost in a great escape, Heroes of Time Legends, starting with Murdoch's Choice, will not let you down.